The wailing sirens shattered the afternoon peace like glass against concrete. 3 patrol cars screeched into the Willowbrook Community Center parking lot, their red and blue lights painting frantic patterns across the faces of shocked bystanders. Children pressed against the chain-link fence surrounding the pool area, their wet swimsuits dripping onto the hot asphalt as they watched uniformed officers storm through the gates. "What's happening?" a mother whispered, clutching her towel tighter. "Why are the police here?" Inside the pool enclosure, 12-year-old Jayden Williams floated on his back in the shallow end, completely unaware that his birthday celebration was about to become a nightmare. Water droplets caught the sunlight as they rolled off his dark skin, and his infectious laugh echoed across the concrete deck, where his classmates had gathered around a small table decorated with superhero-themed plates and a half-eaten chocolate cake. "Cannonball contest next," his best friend Marcus shouted from the diving board. The air smelled of chlorine and sunscreen, mixed with the sweet aroma of birthday cake and the distant scent of barbecue from the adjoining park. Jayden's mother, Denise, sat in a lounge chair nearby, her phone in one hand and a vigilant eye on the dozen kids she'd volunteered to supervise. She worked double shifts at the hospital as a registered nurse, but she'd taken this Saturday off specifically for Jayden's party. "Mom, watch this," Jayden called out, preparing to demonstrate his newest swimming technique. His joy was pure and unguarded, the kind that only comes from being surrounded by friends who genuinely care about you. The community pool had been Jayden's sanctuary since he'd learned to swim 3 years ago. Despite the cruel comments about his weight that followed him through school hallways, here in the water, he felt graceful and free. His swimming coach had even mentioned that he showed real potential for the competitive team next year. The pool was supposed to be a safe space, a place where community guidelines explicitly stated that all residents and their guests were welcome regardless of age, race, or physical appearance. That's when Karen Hendricks made her entrance. She marched through the pool gates like a general inspecting troops, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun that stretched her face taut. Her designer sunglasses reflected the pool's surface as her cold gaze swept across the scene, lingering with obvious disapproval on Jayden and his friends. Karen served as the self-appointed watchdog of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association, a position she'd created for herself through sheer force of will and an endless capacity for complaint. "Excuse me," she announced loudly, her voice cutting through the children's laughter like a blade. "This is completely inappropriate." She planted herself at the edge of the pool, her white tennis outfit pristine despite the humid afternoon heat. Several parents looked up from their conversations, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Denise stood immediately, recognizing the tone of someone looking for trouble. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" she asked politely, though her nurse's instincts were already alerting her to potential danger. She'd dealt with difficult people before, but something about this woman's aggressive posture set off alarm bells. "That child," Karen pointed directly at Jayden, who was still floating peacefully, "is taking up far too much space in the pool. Other families can't enjoy the facilities with him splashing around like that." Her words dripped with barely concealed disgust. "And frankly, I'm concerned about the safety of the other children." The pool deck fell silent except for the gentle lapping of water against the tiles. Jayden's friends exchanged confused glances, while several adults shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Marcus climbed down from the diving board, sensing that playtime was over. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're suggesting," Denise replied, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "Jayden is swimming exactly like every other child here. He's done nothing wrong." Karen's face flushed red beneath her foundation. "Don't get smart with me. That boy is clearly overweight and shouldn't be in the pool without proper supervision. What if he has some kind of medical emergency? What if he can't get out on his own? She gestured dramatically at Jayden, who had stopped floating and was now standing in chest-deep water. Confusion and hurt replacing the joy that had been there moments before. The cruelty of the moment hit like a physical blow. Here was a child celebrating his birthday with friends, and this woman was attacking him for his appearance in front of everyone he cared about. Other parents began to murmur among themselves, some pulling out phones to record what was clearly becoming an ugly confrontation. "Ma'am, you need to stop right now," Denise said, her professional composure beginning to crack. "You're talking about a 12-year-old child at his own birthday party. He's an excellent swimmer and has every right to be here." But Karen was just getting started. She pulled out her phone and began taking pictures of Jayden, who instinctively tried to cover himself with his hands. "I'm documenting this for the HOA board. This is exactly the kind of problem we've been having with people who don't belong in this community, bringing their issues here." The racial undertone in her words was unmistakable. Several parents stood up, their faces showing disgust at what they were witnessing. "Hey, that's enough," called out Mr. Peterson, a retired teacher whose own grandchildren played with Jayden regularly. "Leave the kid alone." "Don't tell me what to do," Karen snapped back. "I pay HOA fees just like everyone else, and I have a right to a safe, comfortable environment. That child needs to get out of the pool immediately." Jayden began swimming toward the pool ladder, his earlier confidence replaced by shame and confusion. The water that had felt like freedom now felt like a spotlight exposing every insecurity he'd ever had about his body. His classmates watched in stunned silence as their friend's special day disintegrated before their eyes. "Jayden, stay right where you are," his mother commanded firmly. "You have done absolutely nothing wrong." She turned to face Karen with the full authority of someone who had spent years advocating for patients in life-or-death situations. "And as for you, I'm calling security to have you removed from this facility." Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Security, honey. I am security around here. I sit on 3 different community boards, and I know exactly who to call." She pulled out her phone again. But this time, she dialed 911. The collective gasp from the other parents was audible. "911, what's your emergency?" came the voice from her phone's speaker, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I need police at the Willowbrook Community Pool immediately. There's an obese black child here who's being aggressive, and I fear for the safety of the other children. His mother is also being confrontational and refusing to control him." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Several parents immediately pulled out their own phones and began recording. Mrs. Johnson, whose daughter was in Jayden's class, started dialing as well. "I'm calling the real police to report a false emergency call," she announced loudly. Denise felt the world tilt on its axis. She'd heard about situations like this, had seen them on the news, but experiencing it firsthand was like being punched in the stomach. Her son was being criminalized for swimming while black and overweight at his own birthday party. "Jayden, come here right now," she called, her voice breaking slightly. She needed to get him away from this woman and this situation before it escalated further. But it was already too late. The sirens were growing louder, and she could see her son's face crumple as he realized what was happening. The first patrol car pulled up just as Jayden was climbing out of the pool. Officer Martinez, a 20-year veteran, stepped out with his hand resting on his radio. He'd received dispatch reports of a disturbance involving an aggressive juvenile. But what he saw was a group of children at a birthday party and one very upset woman in tennis whites. "Someone called about a disturbance," he asked, looking around at the scene with growing confusion. "The cake, The decorations, the children in swimsuits all pointed to a celebration, not a crime in progress. Karen immediately rushed toward him, her voice shrill with manufactured urgency. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. That boy over there has been terrorizing the other children all afternoon. He's too big to be in the pool safely, and his mother won't listen to reason." Officer Martinez looked at Jayden, who was now standing behind his mother with a towel wrapped around his shoulders, tears streaming down his face. The boy was clearly upset, but showed no signs of aggression or inappropriate behavior. "Ma'am, what exactly has this child done that requires police intervention?" "He's being disruptive and unsafe. I have every right as a community member to ensure our facilities are used appropriately." Karen's voice grew more agitated as she realized the officer wasn't immediately siding with her. "These people don't belong here anyway. They're guests, not residents." The racial animus in her statement was clear to everyone present. Officer Martinez sighed heavily, recognizing that he'd been called into the middle of what appeared to be a discrimination incident rather than any legitimate emergency. More parents were gathering now, drawn by the commotion and the presence of police cars. The children huddled together near the birthday table, their festive mood completely destroyed. Marcus stood close to Jayden, his young face showing a mixture of anger and confusion that shouldn't exist on any 12-year-old. "Officer, I need to show you something," said Mrs. Chen, who had been recording on her phone from the beginning. "This woman has been harassing this child and his family for the past 20 minutes. She called 911 and made false statements about what was happening here." Before Officer Martinez could respond, 2 more patrol cars arrived, followed by an ambulance that someone had apparently requested as well. The small pool area was now overwhelmed with emergency vehicles, their lights reflecting off the water and creating a surreal disco effect that was completely at odds with the serious nature of what was unfolding. Denise felt her heart pounding as she watched more officers approach. She thought about all the news stories she'd seen, all the situations that had gone wrong when police encountered black children. "Jayden, stay close to me and keep your hands visible," she whispered to her son, hating that she had to give him these instructions at his own birthday party. The second officer to arrive was Sergeant Williams, no relation, despite the shared name. He took one look at the scene and immediately began trying to de-escalate. "Okay, everyone, let's just take a step back here. I need to understand what's going on." Karen launched into another tirade, but this time, several parents interrupted her. "That's not what happened," called out Mr. Peterson. "This woman has been harassing a child at his birthday party." "I have video evidence of everything she said," added Mrs. Johnson, holding up her phone, "including her making false statements to the 911 operator." As the crowd of witnesses grew and their stories aligned, it became clear to the officers that they were dealing with a woman who had weaponized the police against a black family. Officer Martinez exchanged a look with Sergeant Williams that spoke volumes about their experience with similar calls. But Karen wasn't finished. Seeing that she was losing control of the narrative, she escalated her demands. "I want that child removed from the premises immediately. I want to file charges for harassment and intimidation. These people have been threatening me." "Ma'am, based on what I'm seeing and hearing from multiple witnesses, that's not an accurate description of events," Sergeant Williams replied calmly. "In fact, you might want to consider whether your call to 911 was appropriate, given the circumstances." The crowd of parents was growing angrier by the minute. Children were crying. The birthday cake was melting in the heat, and what should have been a joyful celebration had turned into a community crisis. Someone had also called the local news, and a reporter was already setting up equipment outside the fence. That's when Denise's phone rang. Denise, I just got a call from someone at the pool. Are you and Jayden okay? The voice belonged to her sister Maya, and there was an urgency in her tone that suggested she already knew more than she was letting on. Maya, I can't talk right now. There's been an incident and the police are here and I'm already in my car. Don't say anything else to anyone until I get there. Do you understand me? The authority in Maya's voice was unmistakable, and Denise felt a flicker of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. Her sister had always been her protector, even when they were children. But now, Maya had resources that could actually make a difference. Maya Williams-Chen was the editor-in-chief of the Metropolitan Daily Herald, the city's most influential newspaper and digital news platform. She'd built her career on exposing injustice and holding powerful people accountable for their actions. More importantly, she'd been looking for exactly this kind of story to highlight the ongoing issues with discrimination in suburban communities. As Maya drove toward the pool, she was already making phone calls. Her network of contacts included civil rights attorneys, community activists, and other journalists who specialized in covering incidents of racial bias. By the time she arrived at Willowbrook, she'd already set several wheels in motion. Meanwhile, back at the pool, the situation was reaching a boiling point. More neighbors had arrived, and the community was clearly dividing along predictable lines. Some supported Karen's right to voice concerns about pool safety, while others were horrified by what they'd witnessed. Karen, sensing that public opinion was turning against her, made one final, desperate play. I'm calling my lawyer and the HOA president. This harassment has gone on long enough. I want all these people banned from community facilities. That's when Maya arrived. She walked through the gates with the confident stride of someone accustomed to walking into hostile situations. Her camera crew followed behind her, professional equipment in hand. The press badge hanging around her neck caught the light as she surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of a veteran journalist. "Which one of you is Karen Hendricks?" Maya asked, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet pool deck. Karen turned, immediately suspicious. "Who wants to know? And who gave you permission to bring cameras in here?" Maya Williams-Chen, Metropolitan Daily Herald. I understand you called 911 on a 12-year-old boy at his birthday party. Would you like to comment on that for our evening edition? The blood drained from Karen's face as she realized who she was looking at. The Metropolitan Daily Herald had broken several major corruption stories in the past year, and their investigation of discriminatory practices in local government had led to multiple resignations and policy changes. I don't have to talk to you. This is a private community matter." Karen's earlier bravado was evaporating rapidly as she found herself facing someone with real power. Actually, when you call 911 and falsely report a crime, it becomes a public matter. Maya replied smoothly. She gestured to her camera operator, who began recording. Several witnesses have provided video evidence of your statements to police. Would you like to explain why you felt a child swimming at his birthday party constituted an emergency? Other parents were now approaching Maya, eager to share their accounts of what had happened. Mrs. Johnson immediately provided her phone number so the newspaper could access her video footage. Mr. Peterson offered to write a statement describing Karen's behavior and her discriminatory comments. Officer Martinez approached Maya with obvious relief. "Ma'am, I'm glad you're here. We've been trying to sort out what actually happened, and it's clear that the initial 911 call was not accurate." "What are your next steps, officer?" Maya asked, her phone recording their conversation. "Well, filing a false police report is a misdemeanor offense. Given the evidence we've gathered here, we'll be following up on that. As for the original complaint, there's clearly no basis for any charges against the child or his mother. Karen overheard this exchange and realized that her attempt to use police as her personal enforcement tool had backfired spectacularly. This is ridiculous. I was just trying to ensure community safety. You're all blowing this out of proportion. Mrs. Hendricks, Maya said, turning to face her directly. You called 911 and described a 12-year-old black child as aggressive and claimed a fear for safety when he was simply swimming at his birthday party. How is that ensuring community safety? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Karen looked around at the crowd of neighbors, many of whom she'd lived near for years, and saw expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. Her reputation in the community was crumbling in real time. I think you should leave now, said Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd been watching from her lounge chair. You've caused enough damage for one day. But Maya wasn't finished. Mrs. Hendricks, our research shows that you've filed numerous complaints with the HOA over the past 2 years, many of them targeting families of color. Would you like to address the pattern of discrimination that seems to characterize your community involvement? The revelation that there was a pattern hit the gathered neighbors like a thunderbolt. Several people pulled out their phones and began searching for Maya's previous articles about HOA discrimination. The mood in the crowd shifted from angry to furious as people began to understand that what they'd witnessed wasn't an isolated incident. Karen realized that she was facing not just community disapproval, but potential legal consequences and public humiliation on a scale she'd never imagined. I'm leaving. This is harassment, and I won't stand for it. One more question, Maya called after her. Do you plan to apologize to Jayden and his family for ruining his birthday and subjecting him to this trauma? Karen didn't answer. She stormed toward the parking lot, but Maya's camera crew followed her, capturing her retreat for the evening news broadcast. The image of her fleeing while a 12-year-old boy stood in tears behind her would become iconic within hours. As Karen's car disappeared from the parking lot, the community members who remained began the process of trying to salvage what was left of Jayden's birthday party. But the damage was already done. The cake had melted, the decorations were scattered, and most importantly, a child's trust in his community had been shattered. Maya approached her nephew, who was still wrapped in his towel and staying close to his mother. Hey, birthday boy, I'm sorry this happened to you. It never should have happened. Jayden looked up at his aunt with eyes still wet from tears. Why did she hate me? I wasn't doing anything wrong. The question broke Maya's heart, but it also strengthened her resolve. You didn't do anything wrong, Jayden. Some people have hate in their hearts, but that's not about you. That's about them. And we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened here today. Over the next several hours, Maya and her team worked to piece together a comprehensive account of the incident. They interviewed witnesses, collected video evidence, and researched Karen's history of complaints. What emerged was a disturbing pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been enabled by an HOA system that rarely questioned complaints from white residents. The story that appeared on the Metropolitan Daily Herald's website that evening was devastating in its clarity and impact. The headline read, "Woman calls 911 on black child at birthday party, unaware his aunt runs city's top newspaper." The article included embedded video footage of Karen's 911 call, witness testimonies, and a detailed analysis of her previous complaints to the HOA. Within hours, the story had been shared thousands of times across social media platforms. Justice for Jayden began trending locally, then nationally. News outlets across the country picked up the story. and Karen's image became synonymous with the weaponization of police against black children. The community response was swift and decisive. By Monday morning, a petition calling for Karen's removal from all HOA positions had gathered over 1,500 signatures. Local businesses began posting signs declaring themselves discrimination-free zones. The Willowbrook Community Center announced that it would be implementing new anti-discrimination training for all staff and volunteers. But Maya wasn't satisfied with just public shaming. She used her platform to push for systemic changes that would prevent similar incidents in the future. Her follow-up articles examined HOA governance structures, police response protocols for non-emergency calls, and the broader issue of racial bias in community spaces. The story reached its climax when the City Council announced that it would be holding a special public meeting to address discrimination in community organizations. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening at the largest auditorium in town, and advance registration suggested that attendance would be overwhelming. Karen, meanwhile, had become a pariah in her own neighborhood. Her social media accounts were flooded with criticism. Her employer received calls demanding her termination, and she was asked to resign from every volunteer position she held. The woman who had sought to exclude others now found herself excluded from the community she'd tried to control. On the night of the council meeting, the auditorium was packed beyond capacity. Jayden sat in the front row with his mother and aunt, no longer the frightened child from the pool, but a symbol of resilience in the face of injustice. He wore a new shirt that read, "Birthday Boy," a gift from his classmates who had organized their own protest against discrimination at their school. Maya took the podium first, presenting a detailed account of the incident and its broader implications. Her presentation included audio from Karen's 911 call, video testimony from witnesses, and data showing patterns of discriminatory complaints in HOA communities across the region. This isn't just about one woman's prejudice, Maya told the packed auditorium. This is about systems that allow discrimination to flourish when good people stay silent. My nephew shouldn't have to endure racism at his birthday party, and no child should ever face what he faced that day. The applause was thunderous and sustained. Community member after community member took the microphone to share their own experiences with discrimination and to pledge their support for meaningful change. When Karen was finally called to speak, the auditorium fell silent. She approached the podium slowly, her earlier arrogance replaced by obvious discomfort. The woman who had confidently called police on a child now struggled to make eye contact with the crowd. "I want to apologize to Jayden and his family," she began, her voice barely audible through the microphone. "My actions were wrong, and I take full responsibility for the pain I caused." But the crowd wasn't satisfied with a simple apology. "What about all the other families you've harassed?" someone called out. "What about the pattern of discrimination Maya documented?" Karen's apology crumbled under the weight of accountability. She admitted to filing complaints based on racial bias, acknowledged that she'd weaponized the HOA system against families of color, and promised to undergo diversity training and community service. The City Council's response was comprehensive and immediate. They announced new regulations requiring cultural competency training for all HOA board members, established a community ombudsman position to investigate discrimination complaints, and created a fund to support families who had been wrongfully targeted. Most importantly, they passed the Jayden Williams Community Access Act, which prohibited discrimination in community facilities and established clear penalties for violations. The law became a model for other municipalities dealing with similar issues. Karen faced multiple consequences for her actions. She was banned from holding any HOA positions for 5 years, required to complete 100 hours of community service with local civil rights organizations, and ordered to pay a substantial fine to the city's anti-discrimination fund. Her employer, a local real estate firm, terminated her employment after determining that her actions violated their company's values and potentially exposed them to legal liability. The Willowbrook Community Center underwent a complete transformation in the weeks following the incident. New accessibility features were installed, anti-discrimination policies were prominently posted, and staff underwent extensive training on inclusive practices. The pool area where Jayden had been harassed was renamed the Community Unity Pool and featured a plaque dedicating the space to celebrating diversity and inclusion. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the community itself. Neighbors who had previously remained silent in the face of discrimination now spoke up actively against bias. Children who had witnessed the incident organized their own diversity clubs at school. Families that had felt unwelcome in community spaces began participating more actively, knowing they had allies who would support them. 3 months after the incident, Jayden celebrated his 13th birthday at the same pool where he'd been humiliated. This time, however, the celebration was bigger than his family had ever imagined. Neighbors who hadn't known him before the incident brought their children to join the party. Local businesses donated decorations and food. The mayor attended and presented Jayden with a key to the city. Maya watched her nephew blow out his candles, surrounded by friends and allies. And she felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond professional success. She'd used her platform not just to expose injustice, but to create lasting change. The story that had begun with a child's tears now ended with a community's transformation. As the party wound down and families began to leave, Jayden approached his aunt with a serious expression. "Aunt Maya, I want to be a journalist like you when I grow up." "Why is that, Jayden?" "Because you showed me that words have power. You showed me that telling the truth can change things." He paused, looking out at the pool where children of all colors were still playing together. "I want to help change things too." Maya smiled, knowing that the most important victory wasn't the policy changes or Karen's punishment, but the fact that her nephew had learned that he didn't have to accept injustice silently. He'd learned that he had allies, that his voice mattered, and that change was possible when good people stood together. The sun was setting over the Willowbrook Community Pool, casting long shadows across the deck where a 12-year-old boy had once been made to feel ashamed of his existence. Now those same waters reflected the laughter of children who were learning, perhaps for the first time, what true community looked like. The pool that had been a site of trauma had become a symbol of transformation. Proof that even the deepest prejudices could be overcome when people chose courage over comfort, justice over silence. In the weeks that followed, Maya's reporting on the incident won several journalism awards and led to policy changes in communities across the country. But she kept only one memento from the story on her desk, a photo of Jayden blowing out his birthday candles at his second party, surrounded by a community that had learned to see him not as a threat to be reported, but as a child to be celebrated. The ripple effects of that afternoon at the pool continued to spread, touching lives and changing hearts far beyond Willowbrook. Karen's moment of cruelty had inadvertently sparked a movement toward greater inclusion and understanding. And at the center of it all was a boy who had simply wanted to celebrate his birthday with friends, whose dignity had been attacked, but whose spirit had refused to be broken. Justice, it turned out, sometimes came not from the courts or the police, but from a community's willingness to stand up and say enough. And sometimes it came from having an aunt who knew how to turn pain into power, silence into story, and discrimination into the seed of lasting change. The story of Jayden Williams and the pool incident became required reading in journalism schools as an example of how media could be used as a force for social justice. But more importantly, it became a reminder that every child deserves to feel safe and celebrated in their community, and that it's the responsibility of adults to ensure that promise is kept. Years later, when Jayden had indeed become a journalist himself, he would return to that pool on his birthday each year, not as a victim returning to the scene of trauma, but as a young man returning to the place where he learned that his voice mattered, his existence was valuable, and his community was worth fighting for. The water that had once felt like a prison now felt like freedom, and the community that had once failed him now stood as a testament to the power of truth, courage, and the unwavering belief that every child deserves to swim in peace.